Good morning, everybody. Yeah. So this week, Matthew and I are going to be exploring and sort of coming up with responses to challenging situations. Because I've been asked recently, excuse me, to do a couple of consults. Guess what? When it is in North Carolina?
Yeah, it's that time of year, Teepa, where all of the pollen and stuff is coming in the buds and allergies start kicking in. Yes. And
It's
there's been a
mostly the
lot of wind.
trees right now.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
trees for us. And I apologize. I had already done this, but apparently there's a lot of pollen today and we're expecting the winds to kick up, etc. So let me start over. We're going to be responding to challenging situations. And so the first one, the one we're going to start with this week, is I think the person that I'm caring for is choosing to have bowel movements in spaces where they shouldn't. As a matter of fact, what they do is they move their clothes out of the way and they squat down and they poo and then they wipe with their hand. They don't use, because they aren't in the bathroom, and they get it on their hands and then they're smearing it and it's a mess. And if I say something, they just push me away and they go on and they look at me and they're really unhappy with me trying to get them to stop and go to the bathroom. So that was sort of the scenario that was shared. Now, the complicating feature here is the person is not at home, they're not with their family member. This person is in a memory care center, a place where there are workers there, and the purpose of the workers there is to provide support and care for people living with various dementias. And this particular situation, what we have is one of those atypical dementias that has progressed. And the atypical dementia is a behavioral variant of plus a primary progressive aphasia of a frontal temporal dementia. So we have two aspects, which Matthew, right away, me just sharing it's an FTD with both a behavioral variant on it, which means the frontal lobes involved, and a primary progressive aphasia, which means the temporal lobes are involved. So, what does that tell you as an informed, skilled provider of support and care for people living with various and sundry various brain changes that come with dementia? What do you now know, or
Yeah.
think you know, or you have a handle on?
It gives me a good idea of the skills that I will see what's affected in those particular skills of that particular part of the brain. And then when it comes to communication and being able to connect and support, what I need to start looking at doing or adjusting about my approach so we can connect. So I'm not coming in just using a skill that they may be having a lot of challenges with because of those parts of the brain that are really trying, but are having a hard time right now with figuring out what do I do and what's the sequence and where do I go and what makes logical, rational sense in what I'm doing, and how I communicate or how I take that data in.
Okay, good. So if we were to take, for instance, the behavioral variant part, which is the frontal lobe involvement, what that would mean is that the person's ability to sequence, to initiate, to sequence, to terminate, and to transition is going to be challenged. The person's ability, perhaps in the hippocampal region, which we know is also going to be involved, might be more like a where do I go to do this thing that I need to do? Oh, and am I going to get enough advance notice of when I should be in the place to do the okay, so wait, I need to be aware enough of my body that I'm aware that what I'm feeling is I need to go to the bathroom. And then I need to figure out that the bathroom I need to go is not just peeing. I need to have a bowel movement. So, what I need to do now, what if I simply skip the step because I was more aware internally of what I need to do? Ooh, I need to have a bowel movement. What's the next step if you're not thinking a lot about where you are? What's the next step you would want to do if you need to have a bowel movement right now? What do you want to do?
Go. I mean,
Go.
I
So
gotta
what do?
go. I
You
gotta
try
go.
to get your clothing off, out of the way at least,
Yeah.
so you can do it, right? You don't want to go in your clothes, so you try to. So he's really got the concept of going to the having a bowel movement, but what he's missing is the surround, which frankly doesn't surprise me. So I don't think he's trying to be ugly about anything. I don't think it's really he's trying to be resistant of anything. I think what we didn't do is maybe get him to the right place at the right time for this right thing. And he was wherever he was when this hit, and he doesn't have a lot of sequencing skills. So I go into the situation thinking, okay, so it could simply be a situation where getting him in the right place at the right time might be enough. So my first question to some of the folks is, so how is he going into the bathroom? Is there resistance? Is there, because sometimes that place can become so yucky that people don't want to go back there. So, but they said, no, he'll go with you, but he just won't sit down. He won't stay there. He'll stand to pee, but he won't sit down. So now my brain is thinking, okay. So it's not the place, it's the posture. So he can squat, but sitting down seems to be an issue. So now I know that he's further into his dementia, almost no meaningful language, although he can still sing and loves to sing. He can still do social things, and he can still take your hand, shake your hand, and hold your hand with hand under hand. And he can sort of look at you and know that you're wanting him to do something. And sometimes he gets what you want, sometimes he doesn't, even with visual cues. Um, and he's always a gentleman. So, so we got a few variables here. So we go to the bathroom, we're singing, we're having a good time. We get there, and I go in sideways, because what I don't want is, I don't really want him to see the toilet in the standing position, because you guys, you do this thing with the toilet differently than women do. I mean, I don't mean to say anything, but you do. You have two positions with a toilet. One is standing and one is sitting. And when you only need to pee, you stand and you face it. And when you're needing to do the other, have a bowel movement, you turn about and you sit. Well, so I knew I wanted him to sit, so I didn't set it up so the visual cue for peeing was going to happen. So I walked him and turned him so that he had his back to the toilet to start with. He never actually saw it. We went in sideways, and then we turned and we were singing and chatting. So then it came to sitting. And this is when I figured out, oh, he no longer knows how to sit down without using his hands to sit. And the rail is such that when he holds the rail, he just holds the rail. And so he didn't have the forward flexion and squat position automatic. So he was, when he started to try to go back, he'd become rigid and inflexible. And then, of course, at that point, more than likely leave, because it's not working. We seem to be having a disagreement here. So instead, I used our cross arm lower down. That was like he still got stuck. And then I noticed that he had a low toilet, typical height for a female, too low for a taller male. So he was having to lower his bum lower than his knees. And that was a whole lot of flexibility. When you already are feeling a little, because you got something you got to do, and this isn't it. You need to just it. So what we did, we lowered down. We did the pants we're going to do on Wednesday or Thursday, later this week, or Saturday. I don't remember which day we're doing pants, because the pants was another thing, but that's a whole different thing than what we're talking about here. So we did get the pants dropped. I'll talk about that later. And then what I did is I did do the cross arms down, and then I had him look and reach for the toilet seat with his hand. And once he got the idea, oh, there's a toilet back. Oh, he lowered himself. And once he lowered himself, he sat. And once he sat, he breathed. And once he breathed, he peed. And once he peed, he pooped. I mean, and there was absolutely no resistance. And he was very effective. And then we got cleaned up, changed, and back out the door, all in well under 30 minutes for changing clothing, undergarment that was wet, those kinds of things. So Matthew, when he's going in places that are not the right places, is he doing it on purpose? Does he need a psychiatric evaluation? Does he need more medication for management?
It doesn't sound like it to me, Teepa, from what you just talked about and what just happened, for sure.
What does he need?
He needs the right support and the right care so he can shine.
Oh, so he needs a raised toilet seat
Yeah.
that's maybe tipped a little to the front with some armrests so that he can hold on to them as he sits.
Right.
He needs somebody who is sequencing this and recognizing, it's been about a half hour since a meal. I think this is a good time to go try. We need somebody who's friendly and willing to do the verbal that he can do, which is singing and gesturing that he can appreciate, and to slow down just a little, and then get him something to drink afterward. Um, that's really what we need. And so, this challenging situation, hmm, we need to change something, but it isn't the human being that's already having the change. What we need to really talk about is, how is it that we can have a facility that's called memory care that actually doesn't understand the basics of how you support someone in mid to later dementia, living with dementia, to live life well. That's the challenge. And accepting the challenge is a great way to get started. But if you don't reinforce the behaviors you want to see and model the behaviors you want to see, it sure is easy to blame the person living with the brain change. Till next time, take care with your care, take care of yourself. If you have more questions, let us know. Our next session in will not be about the pants. That will come on Saturday. Our next session will be, what do you do when someone insists that they need to go find their wife, who's actually in a meeting, support group meeting, and he's very insistent, or otherwise he's just going to go home on his own. We'll have to figure it out because it's a challenging situation, not a problematic behavior. See you then.
Thanks, Teepa. Bye, everybody.